This is the third and final of the Huggins Lectures, sponsored by the DuBose Institute. And the first one took us through the intersection of race and Obama's earlier life. Then last night, we followed him and race. I don't know why they're so intersected.
And my premise hasn't changed, that the issue of race has become more difficult the more he's been involved in national politics, and certainly since he has been the President of the United States. And yet, not every negative comment about President Barack Obama, who we talk about today, is racist or necessarily about race. There are some people who just don't like him. And I talked to two classmates who were working for the president at the time, Chris Etley, who's now the dean at UC Berkeley Law School, and Cass Sunstein, who's a senior official in several aspects of the administration. I told both of them, I said, there's going to be a story tomorrow in the Wall Street Journal and Fox News that the president is not president because he didn't properly take the oath. And they said, what? I said, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But you know what they did? Chief Justice John Roberts came back to the White House and gave it officially again, because as we anticipated, there would be challenges. I told you he's a Muslim. I told you he's so-and-so. I told you he's not president, right? And so it worked out well in that sense. And we'll see how this turned into the major issue of race in this campaign.
I don't know, not having been there and not seeing all the facts, what role race played in that. But I think it's fair to say, number one, any of us would be pretty angry. Number two, that the Cambridge police acted stupidly in arresting somebody when there was already proof that they were in their own home. And number three, what I think we know separate and apart from this incident is that there is a long history in this country of African Americans and Latinos being stopped by law enforcement disproportionately.
Now, what's interesting about that is that it has a number of elements in it. And here's the president trying to speak candidly about something he deeply believes in. You know, we have to make sure the police don't get involved in wrongfully charging people with crimes, racial profiling. He did introduce legislation in Illinois, as I said before, about racial profiling. And as he said before, Skip Gates was his friend. So it seemed like a good thing. But what happened is that, if you heard it, when he said the first 5 words, the Cambridge police acted stupidly, everybody nodded, and that's when it said, this is a race issue, right? Because he became, at that very moment, he became not the president of the United States who happened to be black, he became the black president. He'd taken sides, a Harvard-educated president with a Harvard-teaching friend, Skip Gates, against a hard-working class police officer who happened to be white. Right? A lot of people tried to figure out a way to oppose Obama, and this was a convenient one because of the fact that he had that kind of appeal, and this was a way to criticize him. And the reality, as you'll see in the ultimate book, is that Glenn Beck's ratings went up astronomically. Right? He was reprimanded by Fox News, but his ratings went up, and his following went up. So every time someone talks about, yesterday we talked about African Americans criticizing him on race, here are whites criticizing him on race and seeing how that responds. Since Mr. Obama took office, the rate of threats against the president has increased 400% from the 3,000 a year or so under George W. Bush, according to Ronald Kessler, author of the President's Secret Service. Some threats to Obama, whose Secret Service code name is Renegade, have been publicized, including an alleged plot by white supremacists in Tennessee late last year, to rob a gun store, shoot 88 black people, decapitate another 14, and then assassinate the first black president in American history. So, I mean, it's deep-rooted in terms of how some people reacted to what he had to say. In this country, we treat everybody equally in accordance with the law, regardless of race, regardless of religion. Well, it blew up, right? It was an example of a heartfelt statement, but that's why people hate Barack Obama, right? You know, he ignores the desecration, some would say, of those who lost their life 9/11. He doesn't. He said he did, how much he was troubled by that. But that's how people begin to see him in a narrow way. One of the things I was going to say, one of the things that make me so proud of what he's done as the president is something that most people who are not lawyers wouldn't know about or pay attention to. He has created positions on courts throughout this country, on the circuit court, which is one heartbeat away from the Supreme Court, where we have the most diverse court at the federal level that we've ever had, more than any other president in terms of his appointments. We had the first appointment of a person, an African American, to the First Circuit. That's Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, other places, and that's Roger Lee Thompson, an African American woman appointed to the First Circuit. It's never happened before. There's a Haitian man appointed to the Second Circuit, which is New York and other northeastern cases. Third Circuit, he's appointed Joe Greenaway, a classmate a couple of years behind here from Harvard. Fourth Circuit, there are 4 African Americans, and the Fourth Circuit, you may remember, was the most resistant circuit. This is North Carolina, Maryland, Virginia, South Carolina. You can see how complicated that was. Maryland, and now the majority of the people on that court are people of color. And he's appointed the first ever openly gay judges to the circuit courts.
I had just a quick question.
Sure.
So the 3 lectures tell us that this is a man who's not going to play the race card.
Right.
Is he going to play the class card?
He already has.
But you think he's played it as much as he's going to play it?
I think that the class card's complicated because every candidate, unless you go back to who was a candidate from Wisconsin in 1972 that some of us voted for? For president, McGovern, right? McGovern used the word poor. If you look at elections in the 80s and 90s and the 21st century, what do they use the word? Middle class. The book is not going to come out, I'll tell you, until after the election because the issue is so explosive, and my fear is that people will take a sentence or a paragraph out of context and have me saying something that I didn't say. There have been some excellent questions, and part of my not answering them all is that I can't answer them and hurt somebody unintentionally by saying something that may be true, but will be mischaracterized, misinterpreted, or misreported. They're going to be deciding the constitutionality of affirmative action. And that is that's a left-right issue. And I'm unfortunately of the view that we might lose affirmative action in 2012 as we know it. But I remember some post-election conversations with people about how they voted in a particular place in the South. Going to one white couple's home and saying, "How did you vote?" And this one farmer went to his wife and got her information that came back out. And he said, "How did you vote in 2008? He said, "We voted for the nigger," right? Now, the first thing you want to do is say, "Gosh, that's outrageous." No, it's not outrageous, because that means we're taking a step forward. He voted against his view of race for somebody who he thought was the better candidate. There's a Harvard Law School graduate who said, when Derek Bell came to Harvard, I was amazed to see all these black students and some white students demonstrating the lack of diversity. I never even noticed that there was no one black teaching at Harvard. This is a very progressive guy, right? And so the sense that we could almost close our eyes and pretend that race doesn't matter.
Many of those who stand against President Obama are actually fighting against their best interests, especially in health care.
And I wish I could make that a complicated answer. The answer is yes. It's hard to say we don't want government in our lives. We do want government in our lives. We don't want governments in our private lives to interfere without our allowing that to happen, but we do want government to give us something because we pay a lot for that to happen. I got a brilliant question in upstate Pennsylvania, Susquehanna University. She said, I know we're not post-racial, but shouldn't we not change our policies until we're post-racism? Not post-racial, but post-racism. And my unfortunate response was, I'm not sure we're going to be post-racism. I certainly hope that will happen. I just think it's so deeply embedded with David's question. It has nothing to do with class. Poor white people have views about wealthy black people. If you talk about Jim Crow segregation, the reality is that no matter how high you rose as an African American, you still were segregated. No matter how low you were as a white, you had more power to do things. We benefited from the liberalization of voting rights in 2008. It was part of the mark of the Obama campaign.